Do you think UFOs, the paranormal, weird history, cryptozoology, and outsider art are pretty darn cool? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to High Strangeness with your host, Steve Berg.
The video version. Well, hello, folks. Welcome to another episode of High Strangeness. Today, I've got my good buddy, Rileybray on. You know him from the Bigfoot Collectors Club. You might know him from this wonderful band called Spindrift. And you've probably heard of this excellent, important band called Pussy Riot, who he has been touring with recently. Riley, how are you?
Hey, Steve. Very good. Thanks for having me, man.
Oh, thank you for being here, friend. You know, before we get into the zillions of questions I have for you, I'd like to know, what are you listening to these days? What's exciting you? What are you cranking up?
To be honest, I'm listening to like samples that have been crushed through this program I'm working on. So I haven't really been listening to a ton of music. I've been listening to, my free time has been, I've gotten into AI guided programming.
Tell me about this.
So basically, where to start? I have no formal programming background whatsoever. I've like tinkered around with HTML. I have like some like very, very cursory knowledge of like sort of like the formatting and structure. But with the new GPT models that are trained for Python programming, I've been like self-teaching programming. This is like my hobby.
Whoa.
And I've been working on these like audio programs. So like basically this program that I've been working on lately is like inspired by like a Tascam like 4-track cassette, and like how people use them for ambient music, and then they turn the tape speed manipulation knob and like get these warbling sounds. So I've been working on this player that finally works. That's like a 4-track player, and you can adjust the sample rate with a slider. And
really?
So, yes, you can start stacking up these loops, and then just like and also take like something that's at 44.1 and resample it at like 96. This is from my nerds out there.
Yeah.
And so just like crunch it like way down. And so I've just been making these like ambient, abstract, evolving music pieces, and then I just let them play.
Oh, that's fantastic though, because I'll tell you what, I'm like in they're like ambient music. I feel like has been around for a long time, but like it is now become like a genre that's taken seriously.
Yeah.
And I find now is like necessary in my life. Like there are times where I don't want to hear words and I just want to be in an atmosphere, in a vibe.
Yes.
And that's what ambient music does for me.
Yeah, totally. And so then to properly answer your question, I'd say I've been listening to Tim Hecker a good bit lately.
Okay.
He's a great ambient musician. I like really recommend him. I love his music.
I'm writing it down right now.
But yeah, man, ambient music is like having a renaissance, I think, because there's so much noise in the world. And sometimes, you just want to relax. I went through a thing for like years where I didn't want to hear music with words. And I think that's what sent me down this path. And I was just like, I just want like just something to like sort of wrap me in sound, you know?
Yeah, I hear you, because it's comforting. And I do a lot of work at night, and I do not like to work in complete silence, and I can't have distracting music. So
exactly,
I'll even just sometimes go on YouTube and just say like scary forest ambient music.
I love that. Cool.
So you can kind of like put the ambience to your mood or whatever you're working on, and I find that just wonderful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a big part of like why I make music and what I want to do with it. And
yeah. Well, let me ask you this, like, because I know you're a multi-instrumentalist, right? Like, I know you play guitar. Like, I watched a wonderful video that I would love to post of Riley playing with Spindrift, which we're gonna get into later. It's so funny because I love this band, and
me too.
I didn't know Riley was in it until I was actually on your podcast. I was like, wait.
I love connecting those dots in real time.
Yeah, it is. It's such a. Well, you know what? Actually, I want to. You know what? I'm sorry, I get so excited, but
I love it. Tell
me about Spindrift and your time with them.
Okay.
Because Spindrift, folks, if you've never heard of them, they're really like, you know, I'll let you describe them, but this is how they're very cinematic, and it's like psychedelic spaghetti Western music, and it is so beautiful. Talk about like a band that really takes you somewhere, you know, like there's like a narrative playing in my head when I listen to a Spindrift record.
Yeah. I think that's very much the intention, and that's how I was a fan of the band before I joined. This goes way back when I was living in the Bay Area, and I was playing in this sort of heavy psych rock band called Fauna Valetta, and we opened for Spindrift, and I was like, "What is this? I've never seen a band do this. This rules so hard." And so we ended up becoming friends. They ended up staying at my house that night. We ended up recording stuff that many years later came out on one of the records, and I just became friends with KP and the whole gang. And I was working mostly as an audio engineer back then, so I started working with them on that side, and I was like produced some film scores, and I guested on some tracks. My first like recording with Spindrift is me playing sitar on Classic Soundtracks Volume 1. I think this track's called Space Vixens, maybe. I don't remember.
You played the sitar? We're gonna put a pin in that because I'm gonna want to talk about that.
There's a hilarious picture of me in the studio just looking like the early 2000s like Ravi Shankar cosplay.
Buddy, that's good. That is
or I guess not
stuff right there. That's a killer. That's a legend look right there.
it was a great. I was so excited that they asked me to play on that record.
Oh yes.
But then I was around and we were doing shows, and then I had a band called Golden Ghosts, and we did a couple tours opening for Spindrift. That band came and went, and I just kept working with them over the years, and then eventually KP asked me to join because Henry, the old double neck player, the double neck, by the way, if you don't know the band, is a custom built guitar that's a baritone guitar neck on top, so that's tuned to low B, and then a short scale bass on the bottom. So you've got two guitars on you, and I'm constantly switching between, because the baritone's like really big for this whole spaghetti western sound.
Right. Sure.
So that, and sidebar, that guitar was stolen from me twice.
Oh no!
And twice it came back to me.
What?
Yes, there was a police sting involved, actually both times. It's such a recognizable guitar that people steal it, and then they try to sell it. And like the first time a fan in the UK emailed me and was like, "I found your guitar." And we got, so that's like, it just adds to sort of this like cowboy western lore of the band.
Hell
that,
yeah,
like, it's the unstealable guitar.
Yeah.
Fully.
Stealable guitar.
Yeah. But so I toured in Spindrift for, I've been like on and off with that band for like a decade, really, like producing and touring. And I left for a while. I came back. It's kind of one of those bands where there's a big sort of orbit of musicians that are all part of it. So you can kind of come and go if you need to. But I did a lot of time in the band for sure.
Right. And it's been a minute since y'all have released anything.
Yeah.
Is there any plan for a future record, do you think?
It's definitely within the realm of possibility. It kind of like, to be honest, we put out Classic Soundtracks Volume 3. Volume 2 is missing.
Right.
And that was like a really exciting record. It was on Alternative Tentacles, which is Jello Biafra's label, and Jello co-produced it, which also that, like, with me, which was like a mind-blowing moment.
I can't imagine that. Riley, would you like a Coca-Cola?
Like, yeah. And he was remote. Like, this is before pandemic, but he was producing remote, but he stays up all night. So we would like work in the studio till like 3 a.m. And then we'd send him the day's work, and then he'd get back to us at like 3:30 with like, he would handwrite notes, take a photo and email it to us. And he did not pull punches. He'd be like, "You ruined this track. Just go back to the beginning, start again." Like, but he was right. He was always right every time. And
right.
I love that record. I think it's one of my favorite Spindrift records. But that came out, it was like just rolling out. Like, we were on tour, and then that Friday the 13th, the pandemic hit.
Ugh.
We played Reno, canceled the rest of the tour, scrambled home, and then they're like, our warehouse got robbed a year later, and it was just like the band just kept getting like hit, and we just kind of like stepped back for a bit. And KP's just like doing his thing, but I mean, who knows what will come next? But there haven't really been Spindrift shows for a while. It was a very heavy touring band for a while, just like always on the road. But so it's kind of like, it's simmering right now, But
that's,
so yeah,
that was it. I'm glad there wasn't like a hard end to it, because like,
not at all.
I was trying to think, because a lot of my early 2000s are a little bit hazy in Los Angeles.
Well, yeah.
I mean, and a lot of it was because I saw so much music, and I was really into the psychedelic scene in LA. And I was Spaceland a lot, where a lot of the bands. And I'm like, did I see Spindrift play at Spaceland? I very well might have.
Probably. Man, that was what a great era of music. That whole psych rock scene of the like sort of like late 2000s into the aughts. Like,
well, let's segue into that because I remember like how I kind of got into it is I was a massive, still am. I mean, like, a absolutely obsessive Brian Jonestown Massacre fan.
yeah, of course. Yeah.
And that's how I heard about Spindrift is because like Anton wasn't doing an interview and he was talking about all the bands he hated. And then he talked about like a couple bands. He's like, but I also like the Sound Carriers, Spindrift, and named like a couple bands. And I was like, well, I'm buying those. And I went to Amoeba and bought a Spindrift record. And I was like, oh my God, I love it too.
Yeah, KP was a merch guy, I think, for BJM.
Oh,
and
man.
then like one show for some reason Joel couldn't do it and KP filled in on tambourine.
No way.
I think that's the legend. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that's the story. But yeah, he's been in and around that band, and there have been members from BJM in Spindrift as well, and it's like it was all kind of part of that scene. Like,
right.
I felt like kind of like because like KP's like a bit older than me, so like I was like kind of like, whoa, this is like what the cool kids are up to.
Right. I mean, you must have been like kind of a little bit of a youngster in that scene, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But you were in it. I mean, can you talk about like the psych scene and like what like some of the venues that were being? I guess I'm more focused on Los Angeles and maybe the Bay Area because I know like it seemed like a lot of it started in the Bay Area, but then moved to LA, like in the late 90s.
Well, I was in the Bay Area psych scene in that era because I went to UC Berkeley to go to college, and then I stuck around the Bay Area. And I was playing a lot in the punk scene in the Bay Area too. So like I definitely got to do like my Gilman show and a lot of like cool punk houses in Oakland. That was also just like a really cool era of like punk rock. And but that sort of like transitioned when I joined this band Fauna Valetta. That's like this. Honestly, it's probably the best band I've ever been in, and the record came out like before streaming. We keep talking about re-releasing it. It is such a good record.
Oh man,
it does. It's like on some CDs. It doesn't exist, but I gotta re-release that. But
do you have an MP3 version of it?
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Please. I won't share it, but yes, please.
It's man, this guy Alan Brandborg, that was like the main songwriter. He was just like brilliant, like and just like an Iggy Pop level front man. He was incredible. But I mean, he's still like alive. We just don't do the band,
right?
But anyways, I was playing in that band, and like I remember playing with like Sleepy Sun. They were a great Bay Area band. Darker My Love was a cool one. The Asteroid Number 4.
Oh yeah. I still listen to them.
Yeah, they're still going.
They're really good.
Yeah, very, very good. And like, some of the most fun shows is like, we would go to like this. There's this town outside the Bay Area called Bolinas, and there's like this bar there that I can't remember the name of, but it's like doing shows like that and like the folk stuff of that era.
Yeah.
They were a concert promoter, and they did a bunch of shows in like Big Sur.
Yep.
And like,
I've been to a couple. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. You know
it's
what I'm talking
the
about.
Greatest shows. I mean, honestly, you're like watching a small concert in like the Redwoods.
Yes. Yeah. So like these like truly like very sort of like psychedelic, like where the whole environment is this thing and everyone's there together, and it's just it was a very magical time. A lot of those bands I thought maybe would continue and get bigger. We all kind of thought this whole thing was about to blow up, but then it just turned out that I remember like going back to San Francisco after I left when it started getting expensive, and I felt like the scene was drying up, and I came down and moved down to LA. But like I went back up there and I went to Cafe du Nord, which was like a very legendary venue for like going way back. And there was a sign out front it was like the like chalkboard that they used to write the bands that were playing on it. It said Champagne and Oysters. And I was like, haven't heard of that, man.
Gone are the days.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, that really kind of summed it up for me. I was like, well, I guess I left at the right time. This ship has sailed.
They're handing out oysters and champagne instead of like acid and PBR. You know, like
basically, yeah.
You know, it's the psych scene. You know, something I love. I mean, I love the music. It's still like the subgenre of music that I probably listen to most, even still today. But there was like this aesthetic aspect that was really appealing to me, where you would go to Spaceland like in 2002 or 2003, and there'd be a lot of stinky, dirty denim, PBRs. People were still smoking cigs back then.
Yeah.
And like it was a hard partying kind of like, it was really wild, and like there was like a sense of like safe-ish anarchy.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. It was very rock and roll, you know.
Yeah, it was almost the last vestige kind of in a way of like American rock and roll life.
I think in a lot of ways, yeah. I mean, there's definitely still like generations coming up that are like
Mm-hmm.
enamored with the spirit of freedom and rebellion of the whole thing, and
Yeah,
they're doing it. But I mean, times have changed as far as being in a band and making it in a band, and
yeah,
it's just like it's increasingly hard. So people just sort of do it because they love it, which also does create great art. But
for sure.
it would be nice if great art could also, make people a living. But
Well, I have this weird theory, Riley, that in the last 10 years in movies, TVs, and for sure music has been hit the hardest, but like they're demonetizing artists,
yeah,
and
big
I
time.
feel that artists need to be able to do what they're doing full time. And I'm not saying they have to make millions of dollars, but when you decrease the value of art in society, I think you get the situation we're in right now.
Yeah, I was going to say you see the results in real time.
You know
Yeah,
what I
I
mean?
mean, you know, it's funny like calling yourself an artist or trying to make a life as an artist, because like to one degree it feels like very frivolous, or it's like
Yeah.
I should just like do something and like make some sort of more meaningful direct contribution. But on the other hand, like
Oh,
I
hold on,
do think,
hold on. I lost you there for a second.
oh, am I still here?
You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Oh, trying to reconnect. Make sure you have
Yeah.
a stable internet connection. I do have. I
Yeah,
do this all
I
the
got you.
time.
I got you now. Yeah,
Am
you
I
seem
back?
stable. Yeah, I mean, I can. You're a little fuzzy on visually, but I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Do you prefer to stop and start a new clip, or do you want to
Nope,
just edit
nope.
this
We'll
out,
just
or
yeah.
not edit it out?
Yeah, well, I might
That's how
like.
the sausage gets made.
Yeah, sometimes I like to leave all the juice in.
Well, there you go. I mean, there's me like having the sort of pretentious waxing poetic about the life of the artist, and it's like, nah, let's just skip that part.
No.
Right.
But I was like, you were about to say something very interesting, and please, like,
Well, I just, it is like I do try to remind myself, like, and also you're not an artist if you're not working, and
yeah,
you're not like in the practice and you're doing it like
yeah,
regularly, and that's when you can kick yourself and be like, come on, dude, like, what are you doing?
yeah, yeah.
But I do think it brings a real value to the world, even if you're not like, you don't end up being Michelangelo or whatever.
Right.
I think it's if you're drawn to it, I do think it's a worthy and important thing to pursue.
Oh, I absolutely do. And I mean, even going back to like, the Greek time, ancient, like, man, it's like they really lifted artists up in
Yeah.
society and protected them. And they weren't always like, I think when people get mad at like mainstream artists, they're like, well, God, they're like bazillionaires and they're, blah, blah. I'm like, that is not even like 0.002% of artists out there.
Yeah.
It's hand to mouth for most of us.
Yeah. I mean, totally. I mean, the one statistic that I've been I can't get out of my head lately is that the CEO of Spotify is more wealthy than any musician in the history of ever. And that seems off,
Yeah.
you know?
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, I feel like we're doing this wrong.
Yeah,
but-
why are we valuing CEOs more than the people who are actually giving us the beautiful stuff? I don't get it. And I mean, like, art is like everything to me. It's like, why I wake up, not just to create it, but to consume it. Like
Yeah,
more than
totally.
anything, I would consider myself like a appreciator of art, even more than like, because I'm an actor. I mean, while that's an art, I'm not painting or anything like that. I'm just,
Okay, I mean,
I'm just a professional clown, like.
I'm very enamored by the skills of you professional clowns.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
But back to the psych rock scene, if you don't mind. I know Spaceland closed down, and some of the venues that the psych scene was kind of associated with did start closing down or shifting.
Mm-hmm.
What has been the evolution of the psych scene like in LA? I mean, like, what is it like today? Because I'm pretty out of touch and I don't live there anymore.
That's a good question. It's moved. There's other venues that are cool.
Right.
There's still definitely stuff happening. I feel like a lot of people are starting to explore electronic music a good bit, and ambient music. And I feel like to a degree there was like a nostalgia aspect to that scene that like started in the 90s and ran through the aughts.
Definitely.
Whereas like a very kind of like we're all dressing like we're in the 70s and having a good old sort of psych rock cosplay party, which was great.
Yeah.
But I feel like that is started to sort of fade, and people are maybe being a little more futurist about it in a way.
Right.
But I also just think that, it's like with any one of these scenes, it kind of like runs its course, and then it just like splinters into just like so many micro genres, and then everything kind of overlaps. And so I think that, but also, I feel like I'm getting older, and maybe I'm not aware of some of like the cool things that are happening, and like I just don't even know where these things are now, which is definitely possible. But there's still great bands. I think like it's a shame that the Desert Days Festival got canceled, because I feel like that is one of the sort of like, it's like a who's who of like the current psych rock scene.
Yes.
So if you look at that lineup, the one that was hopefully going to happen, and the ones of previous years, you can see a pretty good map of this. This it's still very strong rock and roll psych rock scene. You know, there's a lot of like really cool bands, and then there's like you've got your mainstays like the Black Angels, and like I mean I would say like the OCs are part of that. Maybe
definitely
the Clams, like that kind of stuff.
The Night Beats, although
the Night Beats for sure.
I'm very into the Night Beats lately.
I shot their levitation session, the one they did in the desert. Yeah, with a bunch of friends. It was fun.
I've watched that one on YouTube. They're like literally playing in a desert, right?
Yeah. We dragged out a tape machine and like a full analog studio. We cut the whole thing to tape. It was my friend Ian Dewar did the sound. Who's got a great shout out Love Magnet.
Really, I love that. I mean, like no joke. I've watched it a few times. It's my favorite. I love the Night Beats. It's my favorite live thing that they have out.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah,
I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I shot that with a couple people. Who was the director? I can't even remember his name, but he was good.
Wow.
He was like friend of a friend. This guy was directing it, and I was like, well, I have a bunch of cameras. We can put this thing together. And Ian, my buddy who was doing the sound, he called me into it, and it was a fun day. Danny is a ledge. That guy's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like to me, he's like one of my favorite songwriters.
So good.
Currently go. I mean, he's and you know what? Like while like he's doing something with the sound that's like a little bit different. It's familiar sounding, but like, man, I just haven't heard anyone play the guitar like him. Like
totally.
He is unthinkably good.
Yeah.
I saw him one time like walking around Los Feliz smoking a cigarette, and I like went to go pull my car over and just say, man, like you're so good, dude. But like I was not going to bother him.
Yeah, I hear you. Also, Mikey Whiteside, I don't know if you know that guy. He's a musician who's been in a bunch of stuff, but he was playing in Night Beats in that era. I don't know if he still does, but man, that guy is just a beast. He's so good.
Oh man, I've never gone to one of those like official levitation festivals, but that is like high on my list. On the list for me and my wife.
Yeah, my favorite top 5 Spindrift shows was definitely Levitation 2013, I want to say.
Oh, wow.
We played on one of the outdoor stages. The sun was going down. It was one of the bigger crowds we played to. People like just got it right off the bat. We're just like, this is like, I mean, I think that whole set's on YouTube.
Really?
Got, like platinum blonde hair.
Oh, dude, I'm going to watch that tonight.
Oh, man.
That's amazing.
That was a fun one, yeah.
I can't imagine. So the Levitation festival, for y'all who don't know about it, is like, to my knowledge, the biggest like get together of psychedelic music and psychedelic rock and roll in the world. They play in different places. Austin is a place they play in a lot, and they play in Europe, right?
Yeah, I think they have a couple in Europe now.
Oh God, it sounds like is it like a 2-day thing?
Well, it's changed over the years, because there was the year after we played, we just went to hang out, and there was like a terrible storm, and the venue it's outdoors, but the venue space like flooded, and they had to cancel it. And then that was the year that they moved it into like venues all over Austin,
right?
And I think that's how they do it now. I'm not sure where they're at with it, but I mean, Levitation is like another, if you're just like looking to like dive in, like just look at what they've done and who they've worked with. It's like a who's who. Yeah.
I follow them on Instagram, and that's honestly how I get my new psych rock bands.
Perfect.
Yeah. I'm like, well, they're playing on Levitation. They're definitely worth my time.
It's like seal of approval for sure.
It kind of is to me. Like I'll at least give their album like a full shot, and the hit rate is really high. Like,
definitely, yeah,
it's so good.
Some smart, cool people that are.
Yeah, I did not know you. Thing. Wow. First off, I'm like kind of floored you shot that video. I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'd love to put a link
Oh yeah,
and it shows because
it wasn't just me; it was like a team of people.
Right.
Yeah,
it's always a team when you shoot anything, but like that you were a part of this. I mean, it is to me a legendary piece of.
I love that one. It came out so good. Yeah,
it sounds beautiful, and they played perfectly.
A funny story about that one is we got there to the location in like the middle of the desert,
right?
And then we looked around and we were like, "Wait, did you bring the monitor wedges?" Ian was like, "I thought you brought the monitor wedges." It's like, dude, you're audio, I'm video. You bring the monitor wedge. He's like, "Yeah, but you do live sound." I was like, "Yeah, but what are we doing?" So we like literally had someone scrambled back out of the desert to the nearest Guitar Center, and we bought the cheapest wedges we could find and scrambled back to the location, and we still got the whole thing done.
Oh my God.
That was a crazy moment.
Oh, what a beautiful moment, though. I love that.
That's funny. Yeah.
Let me ask you, because you have been, and I'm not exactly sure how long, but it seems like for a little bit now, because I follow you on the Instagram, but you've been playing with Pussy Riot.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like most of the listeners know who Pussy Riot is. Pussy Riot is, I mean, I'll let you describe it, actually.
Well, yeah. So I play to be specific. I play in a version of Pussy Riot that's called Pussy Riot Siberia. It's like an offshoot. But Pussy Riot is, I think what you're thinking it is. It's Nadia Tolokonnikova.
Yeah.
She's a Russian feminist activist. She was arrested for her performance at the cathedral in Moscow, and it was big international news. Like the kind of thing when I like explaining it to like my parents, friends, or something. Like it's that thing you saw on CNN with the girls with the balaclavas, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah." So it's that. But I started working with Nadia on the film side. I came into DP her art film Putin's Ashes, which was like such an honor to get to shoot.
I've seen that. Oh my God, dude,
oh, cool.
That's so amazing.
I mean, dude, me too. I was like, that's how I felt. I was like, I can't believe I get to do this. But she's just like a visionary, and she's incredible. She's exactly what you think she is. And so we filmed that, and it went really well, and we started becoming friends. She also is now married to one of my like very dear friends. That's how I got sort of brought into the whole world.
Right.
So we shot that. She really liked the way it came out, so we started doing other things. We did another art film protest action called God Save Abortion, where we inflated a 12-foot vagina on the state house capitol there, where they were outlawing abortion. This was Indiana, and we had a bunch of women come in sort of the typical Pussy Riot gear, and we just shot this art film on the steps. It was Nadia's a person who gets my like blood pumping, where I'm just like, okay, I guess we're doing this. It's like 6 a.m, and we're like stepping out to the Supreme Court steps, like, okay. But we did it. We pulled it off. Everything was fine. It was a beautiful piece. It raised a lot of attention. It got a lot of press, and she's really great at that, sort of finding like clever ways that are intense and tough, but also still have a lot of humor and levity to them.
Right. And there's a real sense of like parody too.
Yeah.
That I find so. I feel like when parody is done very smart and in an artful way, it is very powerful. And it gets a message across really well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And she is just a master of that. So we did that, and we were working on some other film projects, and then she got this idea that she wanted to do sort of a new, very different version of Pussy Riot that her completely changed from. She's still doing the music that she has been releasing, but we're doing this other thing that's totally different. It's basically noise music. So it's very loud, and it's very aggressive, and it's very abstract, and we're sort of, it's more like, rather than sort of like taking music and making it noisy, we're making noise and then carving music back out of it. And so I've got this, what I play in that band is just a tray of just knobs and switches.
Hell
so
yes.
It's a bunch of sort of these like weird synthesizers that I've collected from like, there's like one by a company called JMTs. It's like a guy in Japan who builds these like esoteric brutalist silver box. And then I've got a few things from Soma, which is this guy Vlad. I think he might be out of Russia, or was originally out of Russia, but he builds these like bizarre abstract synthesizers, and it's all routed through all sorts of stuff. And then funny enough, I actually use a Rode podcast mixer as my main live mixer just because I like the feeling of the faders a lot. And I need like a good smooth fader for live manipulation. And so yeah, it's Nadia and myself and another musician named Max Lawton who he works with Nadia as a translator. He speaks like 7 languages and he works as a translator of literature, and he's an author. He's just like this very, very smart, very cool guy. And he's super versed in noise music and sort of all this like really obscure stuff. And then John Caldwell, her husband, is a part of the band too. He doesn't perform in the band, but he's like our Rick Rubin. He's like a part of the band.
Spiritual advisor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and also like maker of things happening. Like he's just very good at that. So yeah, it's the 4 of us doing this, and we've done only a handful of shows. We're not going to treat this like a normal band. Like we're not just going to go kind of hit the road, but we've done some pretty amazing shows. We've done our very first sort of like preview show was in like the mall basement of the World Trade Center. And like a little like sort of like commerce space. It was weird that it turned into a gallery. It was like kind of perfect. And David Byrne introduced the project.
Whoa,
which was like a very like pinch me moment of like, is this real?
Your life is a weird dream, isn't it?
Yeah. And that was like sort of our our preview. And then we went to Europe and did a show at a museum in Linz. And then because of that show, we got invited to do a show at the Neue National Gallery in Berlin because we were all just sort of still there. And the museum director, Klaus, is a friend of Nadia's, been following her for a while, and he's like, "You're here, let's have this opportunity." So we got to play in like truly one of the most respected like art institutions in Europe, which was mind blowing. And they set us up on the steps there and kind of let Nadia go for it. So this was all put together in a week, and so she designed these banners that were like these big pink banners, and they said "Love conquers fear," like "Love conquers fear" on 3 banners, which is a Navalny quote. And we got a bunch, or she and John really got a bunch of, I just handled the knobs and the switches. got a bunch of volunteers. I think we had like 50 something women and female identifying people in sort of the Pussy Riot garb, making this flying V formation. And they set us up with a massive PA. And there were, it's unclear, but the estimates have been between 3,000 and 5,000 people showed up for this thing.
Dang.
And like the police designated it a like a protest, not like a concert. Like it was so it's huge police presence and just thousands of people. And this is our 3rd official show.
Right.
Like we had women on the roof letting off these pink smoke signal things. And it started dumping rain while we were playing, just dumping rain. So these people came over and they were holding a tarp over my sins. So I'm like under this tarp, just making just this ungodly racket. It is like truly like it's a show to be experienced. It's really it's unlike anything I've ever done.
It feels like a dream come true for me. I mean, look, I'm still putting on old Sonic Youth records, which I'm sure don't compare at all to what you're talking
Sonic
about.
Youth is that's where it all started for me.
For sure. Me too.
I saw them a bunch of times when I was young, and that was like seeing what they did with sound and how they went from songs into space. I was just like,
right.
That's it. That's the thing.
And it's very like, I feel like a lot of the noise music is super psychedelic, kind of fits in with that whole psychedelic, moniker.
Yeah.
But like, that no wave scene in the 80s in New York is
good.
One of the most important things. I feel like it hasn't been documented anywhere as much as I would want it to be, but it's such an important time in music, I think.
Definitely, yeah. And there was a lot of like kind of like Glenn Branca and like that whole part of the scene where there's like really like abstract sort of like art level musical deconstruction, like the guitar orchestra and all that kind of stuff. It was a very cool time.
Yeah, and even how they performed. Like they were like not necessarily Sonic Youth, but there was a lot of like performance art being fused with this new kind of noise.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like to a certain degree, maybe I'm misinterpreting this, that Pussy art, I would definitely say there's a pretty heavy element of performance art.
Oh, definitely. I mean,
right?
the band is billed as, it's not a band, it's a performance art noise project, basically.
Right.
So it's like, it's very, very strongly rooted in performance art. And it is that before it is like a band per se.
Right.
So most of the shows are like we just did our first club show in New York, but then we went up and did like an arts festival in Hudson. But like a lot of our shows, they're going to be at galleries, they're going to be at museums.
Amazing.
They're going to be in non-traditional venue spaces. We will do some venue shows because sometimes it's nice to not have to build an entire venue to do a show.
Just kind of slide in there and do your thing.
Yeah, but it's like we're really approaching it from a performance art angle, and like we've got a new project brewing that I can't talk about, but I'm really excited about it, and it's like very, very strongly rooted in performance art, and it'll be cool. It's coming soon.
You know, this is something, you know, because I feel like when any time Pussy Riot is involved in any kind of like event, the way I perceive it is, and I'm saying this in the positive way, because I love what they do, I love their message, I am behind them, but there is like this element of danger.
Yeah.
Where, because, you know, a lot of times like they're really going for it, you know, like you know, and like you play it in like untraditional places. There is definitely activism is heavily wrapped up into it. Is it kind of one of these things where there is like a little bit, I mean, and fear is not the right word, but is there like, do you feel like there's like anything could happen?
I mean, to a degree, yeah, it's there. I mean, Nadia is on the Russia most wanted list for her activism. Like if she went to Russia, she would be immediately arrested.
Right.
Because she's speaking out against Putin and dictatorship and the war machine of the world, you know? And so it's, you know, it's there. We are very diligent and careful and, you know, we're paying attention. I try not to think about it, especially when once, you know, performance time is performance time. That's all. That's the only thing that's in your head. And like, you know, I don't want to exaggerate my own like level or involvement, but it exists. You know? It's acknowledged, but not focused on, but also, you know, precautions are taken. I guess I leave it at that. You know?
Good.
Yeah. But I mean, on the lighter side of that, like the activism and like the message is like inseparable from Pussy Riot. You know, it's like, it's not just like a band for a band's sake. Nadia has always said, she's like, I'm not a musician, I'm an artist. Yeah. I mean, she's a great musician, but
surely.
But like that's how she views it. She is a performance artist and she's an activist, and that is what this is. And so I'm just like truly like so honored to be a part of it. And I just like try to give it my all and give it everything I can. She comes up with an idea. She's like, you know how to do this? I was like, nope, but I'll learn. Yeah.
I love that kind of candor. Like, not really, but I will definitely learn because it's important.
I mean, she'd rather hear that than me being like, of course. It's like, no, I have no idea, but give me 2 weeks and I'll be back to you.
Right. You know, I one time, do you know the taco shop in Echo Park called Guisados?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, great tacos, some of the best in Los Angeles, and that's saying something, folks. But I one time was eating there by myself because I would go there all the time, and I saw Nadia in there with, I can't remember who she was with, but I was so starstruck.
She has an aura to her.
And I remember just eating my tacos and kind of peripherally like watching. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like,
yeah. I mean, the first few times I met her, I was definitely intimidated. Or she has like a very strong presence in the room. You know,
undeniably so. Undeniably so. You know, I was thinking, and the messages were definitely different, but the only kind of comparison I can kind of think with Pussy Riot is Throbbing Gristle.
I mean,
they were an art project, you know, like, and they were activists. You know, I think their desires were a little bit different, but
but also sonically with what we're doing right now, somebody actually made that reference. Somebody came up to me at the show. I was like, dude, that was like proper like Throbbing Gristle, and I was like, that is high praise. Thank you very much. Praise.
I love Throbbing Gristle. I still put them on in Psychic TV. Like, I find Genesis P-Org to be one of the most fascinating human beings who ever existed. Like, you know, problematic in certain ways, but like very interesting as like, you know, a person.
I mean, you definitely get into that too when you get into like noise music and black metal and like these like really kind of like on the fringes musical styles. You end up with some very on the fringes people, and I feel like I also feel like in the early Pitchfork days, let's say, people there wasn't as much coverage and people didn't know as much, and they were just like finding this music and then finding out like, oh, some of the people behind some of this stuff are like truly like terrible people. And that's why they make these like wretched sounds. So then there's this split where it's like, well, I want to make music that is like exploring these like really dark things, but I'm not a dark person and I don't want to support these dark people and I'm not into this at all.
Absolutely.
So it's it's kind of like a weird like musical space. And I think we have gotten better at looking at the whole picture when we're about like there's the whole like separate the artist from the art idea, and like I understand that to a degree. But too. Like there's also like very, very clear lines. Like
I grew up a big Smith fan and Morrissey fan, and I have now been able to just completely like say like I can't listen to Morrissey anymore. I'll listen to the Smiths, but Morrissey is such a like. I feel like maybe he's got something happened in his brain. It broke or something because he's such
we're living in brain breaking times, my friend.
We are living in brain breaking. I've never heard anyone put it better than that. That is absolutely perfect. We certainly do, my friend. Well, Rat, I want to move on to some weird stuff, and I want to talk about one of my favorite podcasts in the entire world, the Bigfoot Collectors Club. Michael and Bryce and you. I mean, first off, I just want to say, what nice gentlemen the three of you are.
Oh, thank you.
The most inviting. It is one of the most fun shows to guest on, and I just love you guys. I love your show. It's so beautiful. Oh. And one thing I don't really know though, and when I had Michael and Bryce on, I forgot to ask, how did this show come about, and how did your involvement come in it?
Good question.
Because you're not like, as far as I know, I want to like put words in your mouth, but like you're not like a long, high, strange enthusiast. This stuff is kind of new-ish to you, right?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, yeah. Like I think my high strangeness education is like X-Files in the 90s, like many of my sort of age group. That like I've always like and I've always loved the whole kind of like stoner alien aesthetic and all that kind of stuff. But I wasn't like fully into it. I just sort of liked the aesthetic of it and the world of it and the vibe of it. And like,
me too.
But so Mike, I was doing a podcast because I was running a little recording studio out of my house. As like a side hustle. We were talking about side hustles.
Yeah, you got to have like 20 now.
Because if you want to survive, you need some side hustles.
Cool country.
So
yeah, capitalism, we love it.
Yeah, I know, right? But so yeah, I had that little side hustle going. I was doing just a for hire recording studio, and a friend of a friend from another, going back to psych rock days, this band Lou Marian's out of the Bay Area.
Yeah, sure.
One of my friends from that band is an engineer. And he was like, I got this podcast thing, I can't do it. Like, can you pick it up? And I was like, yeah, definitely. And so it was Jen Kirkman doing a podcast.
I know Jen.
I mean, Jen, we call her the fairy godmother of the show because she's the reason it all came. She's so great.
Yeah.
So she was doing a podcast for Amazon about the holidays.
Perfect.
So I recorded 6 episodes of that. And one of her guests also to wrap this all around yet again was Kim Gordon.
Whoa.
And I know. So Kim Gordon came to my house, my studio, one of my all-time heroes of all time. And I was really trying to just play it cool. and she was like, it's a cool studio, I like it. And I was like, oh my God, Kim Gordon thinks my studio's cool. Which
I would have been the same. Amazing.
I was really great. I mean, she's like just one of my heroes of all time. But,
agree.
So I was doing, and then Michael ended up being one of Jen's guests. And so they did their episode, and he was also kind of looking around. I was like, this is cool little studio in here. And he like kind of hung around afterwards, and he was like, are you into like paranormal stuff? And I was like, I mean, yeah, yeah, kind of, sure. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, like a friend of mine, like we just started the podcast. They had just recorded their episode 0, but they couldn't figure out how to get 2 mics to work. So they just passed one mic back and forth. Bless them. And, and he's like, yeah, we don't really know how to record. And like, just like we do, like try it out. We just want to try to do a few episodes here. And I was like, sure. Like, so we did a few episodes where they just like paid me as their engineer and producer. And then I was kind of like sitting there, and I was like, man, I really want to say something.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I like these guys. These guys are cool. Like, I'm just kind of like sitting there recording, like listening. And I was like, this is fun. And then, so a few episodes in, I just was like, before they left, I was like, hey guys, like, hold up a second. I was like, I'm just going to throw this out here. Like, what if you guys stopped paying me and we just became partners, and then we just did this thing? And they were like, honestly, we were about to run out of money. So that's like perfect. And I was like, okay, great. Like, I was just like, I'll be the producer. Like, maybe I'll do some scoring. Like, I'll get on mic at some point. But like, it's your show. Like, you guys are the show. Like, I'll just be the producer. But I just want to be a part of this. I just like something about this. I just really like this. And then it just went from there. And then I started doing the live scoring, and I started talking more. And just what are we at? 7.5 years or something like that?
I know. And like, you're such a fan favorite. Like, I've been listening to the show for a few years, and I was, so I don't really know the time where you were kind of more tangentially on the mic, but you're necessary. I mean, like, like, my
Thanks,
God.
dude.
Well, but it's also like, because I feel like the perspectives are so well balanced.
That's what I love about our show. The three of us, it really is. It forms a strong shape. Like,
it does,
and it's just. I love those dudes. Like, me
too, man.
Like, we recorded last night, and it was like, we did the episode, and then we were trying to get through this ad read, and like, we could not stop making each other laugh during this ad read. Like, we were just dying, just trying to read some copy. And it's like, the fact that doing this every week with these dudes, and this many years later, we're still just like cracking each other up. It's just like, this is like magic. I'm so thankful for it.
And that does not happen all the time. No. Like, I've been lucky enough to be in a lot of different projects and shows, and it's really rare where it just doesn't feel like work.
Yeah, totally.
And that's fine. It doesn't always have to be gumdrops and rainbows.
To be honest, sometimes it feels like work. When I'm like up against an editing deadline, and we've now switched to video, and I'm like trying to get the audio to sync, and I'm like, I do an export and it's wrong, and I got to start again. I was like,
I mean, I'm a one-man band here, and I am absolutely the worst with technology. When you hear this, you'll be like, oh God, Steve, you didn't mix this well at all. I mean, and I'm doing the best I can. I feel like I'm getting a little better, but it is really tricky stuff.
Feel that way. It is, The platforms are getting better.
They are.
Shout out to Riverside. They've really upped their game.
They're doing a lot of the work for me, where now I kind of just sound mix it to the best of my ability and hope for the best. But I definitely, like, the first 20 episodes I recorded, I'm always embarrassed when people's like, oh, should I start listening to your show from the beginning? I'm like, I don't know.
You skip the first couple.
It sounds like we're in a closet. It does not sound good.
I mean, I still feel like I'm always finding my footing with the show, and finding like the sound of the show. And I intentionally didn't just like make presets for everyone's mic channel. So like, every time I mix the show, like, because I'm like, I just feel like it's just like always improving and getting better, and I'm learning. Like, podcasting is like sort of new form, and
it is.
I'm really, really big on quality too. Like, I think to maybe an annoying degree with Michael sometimes. Like, that's like the back and forth where I'm just like, no, it's like, if it's not perfect, I don't want to put it out. And he's like, we have to put this out every week. You're going to kill yourself and me in the process.
Right.
But that balance keeps it really good. And like, we push each other and keep the thing moving, and we're always trying to improve it and find, not just repeat ourselves 7 years in, So.
Right. And you don't, I feel like y'all have found like a great way to like keep the show evolving, because it is hard to, like, just do this. I mean, like, there's certain people who can do the same thing for 20 years and it really works.
Right. Sure.
If you are, but like, I find myself sometimes like, oh, I'm getting bored. I need to like make this more entertaining for myself. So yeah. If you're having fun, then the audience, I think, usually has fun.
I think so too. And one of the places for me with that is the scores, like, because like I never use canned music. It's always an original score for every episode.
And it's so good.
Nova's just crawled under my desk and is doing his best to knock into my mic stand.
Oh, good. Yeah, no, we love guest stars.
But yeah, so like, with like on our Patreon, not all of the scores, but a lot of the scores of the show are available, and it's now over 24 hours of music.
That's incredible.
It feels good, yeah.
And it's also nice to put your music out there too. And
especially this sort of ambient, long form music. But every time I do a score, I try to use different instruments. I never use the same sounds. I never use just like a stock thing. Like, I'm always like building patches and using, like, maybe I'll use a guitar, maybe I'll use a synthesizer, maybe I'll use just like plugins, like, and I change it every time. And it's like it's been this really great practice in my life of like also having to create a piece of music and release it, and then that's it. Like, I don't get to like tweak on it and futz with it. And sometimes there are mistakes, and sometimes it's not exactly what I envisioned, but it's just like, it's done, it's out, and I'm working on the next one.
And yet I do think like for myself, deadlines are good, especially when I've had like writing gigs, like, or like I'm, working on a project, like writing a project. If I don't have a deadline, I will never turn it in. I will well, it's not good enough. I have to rewrite like the second act. It sucks. Like.
Oh, buddy. Oh, is that the truth? I have so many almost finished projects.
Oh, man. It's every once in a while I'll go into one of my hard drives. It's like it's like just a hard drive of unfinished like screenplays and like pitch ideas for TV shows, and like it's embarrassing.
Yeah, and it's also embarrassing because like a lot of it's like really good, and you're just like, why didn't I do that?
Right? Like I'm like, you were right there. Like you gave up after the second act because it got a little bit hard.
Oh man, yeah.
Well, I want to ask you this too, because they sort of refer, Michael and Bryce kind of lovingly refer to you as the resident skeptic of the show. And I wonder, like, can you like and maybe there hasn't been much of one, but has there been an evolution from when you started this show to today? Like, do you see high strangeness and Bigfoot, UFOs, ghosts, and any other kind of form of the strange and unusual in a different light now than you did 7.5 years ago?
Definitely. I think before I just thought of it as like this sort of like fun, like kind of like stoner conversation thing.
Yeah. And it is that.
It remains that.
It remains, and that's good. It should always remain that.
And I think that's like, that's a cornerstone of it too.
Absolutely.
But one of the things that I've just been struck by over the years is just the amount of very earnest, very honest seeming people that have experienced just truly unexplainable things in their lives and in their perception. And like, especially like with like ghost stuff, like, also it's not just the stories of high strangeness, but it's the guests. Like we just have a guest every week and everyone's like, oh, nothing ever happened to me. And they're like, well, I did live in a haunted apartment. And then, it's like, okay, let's get into that. And so it's like, everyone has some level of experience. This is also common to every human history and mythology. Like this has been with us since the beginning. And then, so to me, it's like the paranormal becomes this like sort of Trojan horse to get into like more serious and maybe less fun conversations about like mortality. And well, maybe they are fun. I mean, it depends on how you look at it, but and like just the nature of reality and the nature of consciousness and the nature of perception and all of these things, and how it becomes this lens to look at reality with kind of like not like a fresh set of eyes, but like a removed set of constraints. And just like kind of like really opening yourself up to like Nova now has my headphone cable wrapped around his body, buddy. Just like opening yourself up to these like very broad ideas and like questioning your own perception, your own eyes, your own consciousness. Where does that come from? All of these things. It becomes this like really great lens to kind of like view yourself in this very mysterious universe that we don't fully understand. So like, does that mean that I believe Bigfoot is a flesh and blood creature in the forest? I mean, with Bryce on Expedition Bigfoot, he's moving the needle. Yeah, he's moving the needle, baby. But like, fundamentally, like, and we were actually talking about this on an upcoming episode, like, fundamentally, I'm sort of like in the materialist camp where I'm like, reality is reality. But also my experience of reality is entirely subjective to my own processing and preconceived notions and sensory input and all these things. And so there is this layer between sort of material reality and the experience of material reality. And I think that's where the paranormal kind of lives. Yeah. And like what it is, of course, like I cannot say, and I won't ever firmly believe something if I don't see it to be provable and repeatable.
Same.
But it's definitely like, it's just become this really interesting lens in my life to like re-examine myself, my mind, the people around me, the way people behave, and also it's just become a great, like, everybody now is like, oh, it's Riley, the Bigfoot guy. Yeah. Like, and they want to talk to me about whatever paranormal thing. So I get these interactions now a lot that I really enjoy. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of, I'd say, the way it's evolved and the way that I see it now.
Well, you said so many beautiful things there, and I just could not agree with you more. Like, I think a lot of what it is, it's just kind of like a primer to examine your life and examine the world around you, even society and like other people. Like it is when you said it's a lens is such a perfect way of putting it because, sometimes you have to take the paranormal lens off to like, go to work and,
Right.
like, interact in society.
Sure.
But there are times when you like, I don't want to say disassociate because that's kind of has a negative connotation. Even though I don't always think disassociate.
Not always.
Yeah, I don't think it necessarily means that. But like when I do want to disassociate and kind of disappear from reality, there's no better like way to do it than like to read a high strange book or look into it or read about a case or interview somebody.
Yeah.
It really is just fun. Like some of the most interesting conversations can branch out about philosophy and mortality, like you said. So,
totally. Yeah. And it doesn't have this like sort of like cringy, like, now we're going to talk about philosophy. It's like
Yes,
we're still
exactly.
like joking around, like having fun, but then we're like, what do you think happens when we die?
Right.
It's like it's just a more fun way to approach like sometimes like difficult ideas,
Yeah, I think it is. I think it makes it easier. And that sometimes I'm like, this sounds, and like you, I do not have a belief system with any of this stuff.
I like that. I think it's a great way to operate.
I'm agnostic to it all. I think there's something to it. That's all I can really like say after a lifetime of looking into it.
Yeah,
But,
I mean that part seems undeniable. There's too many experiences that it's just nothing.
Right. I don't think everyone is hallucinating. And if everyone is hallucinating, that's just as interesting.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right?
And why are we having the same hallucination? What does that mean? Like,
yeah,
what is going
these,
on?
What are these archetypes that keep on showing up? So to me, so like there's no side of this where it's not deeply fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And so I feel lucky in that regard because I think there's some people like who just need answers, and I'm like, you're never gonna find them.
Yeah, that's not what this is. Yeah,
that's not what this is. And then, like using Bigfoot as an example, like maybe there is a flesh and blood Bigfoot. I find it extremely hard to believe that we wouldn't find a fossil record. And people will argue with me and say, well, they found giants. I'm like, but have they? We don't know that for sure. That's just like, that's
like,
one of those
I saw
rumors.
that picture on Facebook too. Yeah.
Right. And then they'd be like, well, they found them, but then the Smithsonian took them. I'm like, but I don't know that for sure.
Right.
Yeah. I know that's a theory. Yeah. And it's cool. I would love to have that announcement, breaking news. They found 12-foot tall human beings from
wouldn't
pre-ice age. That'd be great.
And
we could use a little.
I could wrap my head around that. I could see that.
Sure. But
this Earth has been here a long time.
Oh, it's old, and I don't think we know the mysteries she has.
No, I don't think at all. Not at all.
So, are there like facets of the paranormal or high strangeness, whatever you want to call this stuff, that you find more compelling than others? And I guess maybe to focus that in, like, just like, are there like like manifestations such as UFOs or ghosts or cryptids that you kind of give a little more credence than the other?
I'm like really into the idea of like contact with higher consciousness. Especially from like in my youth, like experimenting with psychedelics, like definitely talked to some people that felt like
I
they
did
weren't
too.
me.
I think we talked to the same people, Frank.
I think we may have. Yeah. And I love like Philip K. Dick is like, especially like the Valis trilogy and like that whole idea of like the download of consciousness and all that stuff. And I would like to believe that is real and possible and maybe even something that I've experienced or maybe we've all experienced to some degree. Right. And I'm really, really fascinated by this idea of like consciousness transcending the speed of light and like permeating through the universe, and like this idea of like these like sort of like pure thought light beings, whatever they are, that are ancient as the universe and permeate all things and like are sort of like always with us, and like both they're not like guiding, like I don't sort of have this like sort of like egoist notion of like destiny and like that I'm being guided by these things, but like just like they're observing and they are shaping, but they're not. There's also like sort of like a level of removed, like the sort of like the scientist observing the subject, like where they don't, it's not like that it's uncaring, but there's a I don't know. There's like an ancient sort of coldness to the whole thing that is like powerful. I'm starting to get into some like very sort of abstract.
No. But I think you're right. Like I don't think like UFOs, for example, or whatever the UFO nuts that are controlling UFOs. I don't think if you I've read so many books about this stuff. And it does not just seem to be clear if it's benevolent or malevolent. I think it's in the middle.
Neither.
I think it doesn't care. Like really, you know?
Yeah, but it also like sort of does. At least this is like that's like the experience I had once many years ago when I sort of like met this being. It had this sense that I was like, it was cold, but it wasn't mean,
right?
But it was still sort of loving, but it was like just bigger, you know, and like. So I've always been really, really, really fascinated by that specific sort of idea of like the root of consciousness and these like, do we live in a conscious universe? Like, you know, is that what the paranormal is? And we talk about that a lot on the shows. Like, is the paranormal just this like larger thing that's playing out in all these different forms, but it's really sort of all masks of the same thing? And that's like that Jacques Vallée idea, basically.
That's what makes the most sense to me at this very moment is that, and it's, you know, Vallée will talk. He's got this control system theory where he thinks this stuff behaves as a control system, almost like a cultural thermostat.
Yeah, totally.
And it is going to give society or a culture what it can sort of understand within its framework.
Yeah.
You know, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, it was the religious experience. But a lot of these stories, if you put them in Times Square in 2024, people would say, oh, it's a UFO.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's just, and in 10, 15 years or 100 years, if humans are lucky enough to make it, we'll probably have a different conception of what this stuff could be.
Absolutely. Yeah. And on that note, like that's at the end of the day, like what I want to, if I could sort of put it in my ideal frame, like it would be like that it is this force that's like shepherding us through the atomic age and the step to become like, you know, first an interplanetary species, then an intersystem species, and then, you know, eventually like transcend our form and become sky gods or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Like I kind of think that's like our function is to like birth something that is like greater than like transcend our limitations. And that gets into that sort of like, you know, we're like one of countless like planets that are going through this transition, and it's like it's just like tending the crops, you know, it's just like trying to sort of guide us through, but like some leaves are gonna fall, you know. So it's like and we're like right there now where it's like we're either going to totally screw this up or we're going to transcend and like start reaching a next stage of civilization. I'd like to believe that the paranormal is somehow a part of that and somehow trying to shepherd us through this period.
It's like that little stick kind of poking us.
Yeah,
hey,
like,
pay attention. Yeah, exactly. Come on.
Yeah, I was like, maybe don't push that button.
Exactly. Oh, you split
the atom.
Well.
We got an atom split on Earth. Like, can we get somebody over there?
Exactly. Gary, get down there.
Yes, they're kicking it off.
Here we go.
Yeah,
it was inevitable.
But like literally, yes. Like that's. I would love it if it turns out just that's what it is.
I like that. I'm gonna kind of go with that. The rileybray theory is what we'll call it from now on.
I don't know if I'll take the credit, but
yeah,
sure.
Well, I mean, you know, since you have such, you know, a deep interest in consciousness, which I agree, it is, I think, inextricably linked with this stuff in a way where I'm not sure I understand it, but it is. I feel. What do you think about kind of this, like almost like philosophy 101, bong room, dorm room hit territory stuff? This is the question. It's, do you think a UFO is it needs humans to observe it to actually exist? Like, or do you think, like, let's say, like, I guess here's the dummy example. If all humans were wiped off the face of the planet, all animals, all living life, do you think UFOs would still be flying and would be, you know, around, or ghosts or cryptids even?
I mean, yeah, that is like, but yeah, like UFOs on a dead planet. That's kind of a cool thought.
Yeah, it is.
But I mean, that is like one of the like sort of like fundamental philosophical like questions, right? Like the observer created universe. You know, does it? It's the if a tree falls in the woods idea.
Yep, absolutely.
So to it, man, I mean, it's an unanswerable question. So
of course,
that's the start.
That's
but
of course it is.
I do sort of tend to the like perception is a necessary condition for the existence of reality. Like it's because if something is not perceived, how can it exist?
Right.
At least on some level. And like, okay, like just arguing against myself is like there are any number of planets that I absolutely believe in that I don't know are being perceived, but it's not the fact that I don't know that they're being perceived. I guess it's like, because I don't know what you're seeing. Like, so I have no reference for that. So I can't really rule that out. Like, you can't say I only believe in what I've seen. Like, that's ridiculous. Because like I haven't been to India, but I believe India's there.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So I do. I think I do lean more towards the, like the paranormal requires an observer,
right,
to carry out its function, to exist in a way. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's like you do just get kind of like stuck in this loop then of like, well, yeah, but things exist but then it's like, yeah, but what's perceiving it? And then then you start getting to that notion of like, well, then is the universe conscious and it's perceiving itself, and we are just like one little receptor, neuron of the skin of the universe. We're
just expressions of the universe, maybe.
Right. Yeah. And the whole thing is self-perceiving. So it becomes this like Ouroboros, like the snake eating its tail kind of thing of like the universe exists and so it perceives and so it exists and so it perceives. And like, I think kind of ends up in that place. I guess that's kind of how I'd answer that.
Oh, I like that. That's good. You nailed it, by the way. A plus.
Okay, cool. Stoner philosophy 101.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Well, just to tag one more stoner piece, I was recently reading an article that I cannot probably summarize too well because I'm not smart enough, but the gist of it was with quantum mechanics and the way they're like philosophizing about it is that if you mention an idea, then it becomes possible.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything's impossible until it's brought into consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Then they say like literally nothing is impossible.
Right.
Literally nothing. So if you bring it up, if you raise a new idea, there's a possibility it can happen, no matter how far out it seems.
Mm-hmm. And so, even building on that is, I think once the idea exists, it almost becomes an inevitability, not a possibility. Mm-hmm. And you see that it also, and the clock starts ticking. Like, like I think the telephone is an example of that was invented simultaneously, like separately. There's a ton of examples of this.
Yeah.
There's a term for it too. I forget what it is, where someone has an idea and it's concurrently happening in this hive mind.
Is that morphic resonance?
Maybe. I like
because I think it was Rupert Sheldrake who actually discovered that like primitive man were building fires and using tools at the exact same time on the far reaches of the planet.
That perfect example of it.
Right. Yeah. And they know this now, I guess, if you believe science, which I do. Not everyone does, Riley.
I know.
Right? Ew, it's crazy out there.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, and that is so fascinating. So it almost comes with invention. And I believe the motion picture is one of those examples where the Lumiere brothers were doing it at the same time as Thomas Edison was doing it. And I think another Russian inventor was doing it at the same time.
Makes sense, yeah.
But they didn't know because they also didn't want to talk about it because they wanted to be the first.
Everyone's trying to do the first thing.
But it was all happening at the same time. And these were giant leaps at the time, like almost unthinkable.
Mm-hmm. And the internet has accelerated this process like exponentially. You know? The other thing that like came to mind when you were talking about that is I think it's the 4-minute mile. It was a thing that it was thought to be an unbreakable barrier. And then as soon as someone did it, then tons of people did it.
Yeah.
And it was like, it's that same idea of like, if we believe something to be an impossible thing, it remains impossible. But as soon as one person proves, no, this is possible, like, then it just becomes almost regular, And I think that applies to like ideas too. And we're really entering like an accelerated time of our evolution and our timeline. And it's a dangerous time for sure.
It's dangerous. Yeah. And like with AI and like, massive advancements in technology that we can't even fathom right now. it's gonna get weird, and it may be great. It may be what saves us in the end, and can like reverse climate change. Like I do have this like weird hope that technology in some young kid right now is tinkering around in his bedroom with an idea. He's like, or we could use mushrooms to suck up all the toxins and release new carbon into the air or something, like.
Yeah.
But then you have oil companies not letting that happen because there's been plenty of people.
Tale as old as time. But oh man, sorry, I totally just derailed. I had a thought on that.
It'll come back.
Right out the window.
Well, I'm going to let you go pretty soon because I've taken up so much of your time. But I do want to ask you. So after hearing all these stories on your show, and you're hearing a lot of new ideas, and like, have you found any kind of patterns for you that have started to emerge? And I'm not necessarily talking about like, we keep on seeing this like 8-foot tall hair covered creature. Not necessarily the manifestation of high strangeness, but some of the like parts of the stories that like be it a geographic location or a feeling someone is describing. Like, are there patterns that you've kind of go, oh, that's interesting?
I think one thing that's really struck me is that before I started learning more and more and more about this, I thought of it as sort of like a scary, dark fire in the sky sort of vibe. And it's the level of sort of humor in a lot of these things that there's like this like cheeky, like trickster kind of thing, like of this sort of like, and then we'll just throw this in so no one's ever going to believe you,
right?
And that I see as this like repeated pattern where I'm trying to think of like a specific example, but like the space pancakes is a good example. It's just like what
the hell?
What?
Yeah,
but it's like also like this guy, I don't think he was just making that up,
No.
So and in that case there's like physical evidence, there's all this stuff, but it's the humor element that has really struck me, and I see as this continued pattern of it just sort of feels like it's like a friendly kind of like ribbing. Like,
it is.
Yeah.
It is. I totally agree. And I've thought about that a lot. And I once gave a lecture about like absurdism and surrealism in high strangeness.
Love that.
And to me, it is, I mean, like this is just my own like idea. I'm not saying this is what it is, but humor, absurdism, and surrealism helps you remember moments well.
Yeah.
Or can make a bigger impact because laughing is such a heightened emotion. And when you're confounded and confused, like if you look at a surrealist painting and like you're going to give it some time, look at it for 5 minutes, it is going to take you on the most wild ride. Even like looking at like a Dali painting, it's like you could stare at that for an hour and there's like 10 movies playing within that painting.
Oh man, totally.
It's like the alpha and the omega. It is just heavy, heavy stuff. And so I do think humor, absurdism, and just goofballness plays into this stuff.
Yeah, I do too. And it all kind of gets back to these same roots of like questioning your reality, questioning your mind, just, I don't know. And I like that it makes it not feel scary. Like,
yeah, me too.
Like, I would be really excited if I saw a UFO. Like, I'd be like, even if like I saw an alien in the flesh, I'd be like, hell yeah, brother, what's up?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I want to meet the space people. Like,
man, I'm with you. I hope I would love it to be like a real goofball one that like, gets off like a little saucer. It's like a purple and fuzzy, like it speaks in a high pitched voice. Like it'd be amazing.
Top hat and a cane, maybe.
Yeah, it does a little Irish jig and gets back on. Yes. That is if we're crafting our ideal UFO situations, I think you and I are looking for the same, alien experience, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
With some Podico. Buddy, I have one last question before I let you go. And I wonder sometimes if, music, rhythm, drums, these are ancient things. And, back in some of these ancient cultures, like they were really using music and drumming and, sound as a tool of divination to commune with the other. And I do think psychedelic music, the repetition, the drones, really has this primal kind of sound to it. And a lot of it is the repetition for me. And it's like a kind of avoidance of like blues scales. And it drives something into you. And it does like, it's almost like binaural beats, right? Like I feel like there's something about psychedelic music that like it is we're going to play 3 chords for 7 minutes and we're going to have like 4 people doing it.
Mhm.
And then there's a nice sitar or drone instrument. To me, we're speaking of the most beautiful kind of music. And
Totally.
I wonder, do you think there's like a divinational quality to music?
100%, yes. And it's what drew me into it in the first place. Like before I even knew what I was experiencing, when I just started picking up instruments as a kid and like checking out for like an hour and then being like, whoa.
Yeah.
And like I am still always like chasing that feeling in live performance, in writing, in playing. And like I spend, and this is very intentional, but I spend a lot of time playing music that I do not record, and it is not for anyone. And I just like, to me, it's like respecting and maintaining my antenna, where I'm just like, I'm not going to try to monetize this. I'm not going to try to sell this. I'm not going to try to impress anyone with this.
Right.
I'm just going to do it. Like, and just really try to like fully tap in and just only think of the instrument and almost like listen for the next note that's coming rather than like choose to play it. And like, that is just a huge, huge, huge part of music to me. And I do think it's like, you're participating in a very ancient ritual that is like fundamental to the human experience and like human communication. And I mean, I know like not everyone can experience music. Like I don't want to like sort of take this like ableist slant on it.
I hear you. Yeah.
But like, I do think that it is like, it's just a fundamental thing. And to me, it's like, it's the closest job to like wizard that I could find in this life. And I was like, well, I'm going to do that one then. Like,
that is so perfect. I love that.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Like I approach music with like awe and reverence, and as a like spiritual practice. I try to avoid that word a lot because it sounds a little like
it's loaded, but yeah, I hear what you're saying, man. For sure.
Fully. Yeah. I just like, it's like an antenna. Like I'm trying to tune my brain to just let these things come in and then just let them come out through my hands, and then they just exist in the air. And I perceive them back on myself as like sound waves. And it's just this, you just build up this cycle and then you just exist in it, and you're able to disattach from your thoughts. And it's not like I'm just like sitting here floating, playing a sitar all day. Like you don't get those moments. Like you have to work hard to get those moments. But when you get them, they are like, it's like transcendent. It's beautiful. I love it. It's like the greatest thing.
Oh, so, Rileybray, you are a beautiful man. I got to tell you,
thank you.
I am so happy I know you. It truly,
me too, man.
You're a wonderful person. And I want to admit something to you. When I was doing my dishes this morning, cleaning up my kitchen, a song popped in my head because I was like, Rileybray. I'm interviewing Rileybray later. A song I probably haven't thought about, and I was never even a fan of the band. But do you remember the band Live from the 90s?
Yes, sure. Yeah.
And they had the song called The Beauty of Gray. And in my head, I was like, the beauty of Bray, like Rileybray, and I had to start like making lyrics up to it.
Oh my god,
it was great. I'll sing it into a voice memo to you later.
Oh my, please send me that.
Yeah, you'll love it.
I'll send you the Fauna Valetta record. You send me that.
Okay. Oh man, buddy, where can people find more of you? Please tell us.
I'm mostly only on Instagram as at Peace Drone. Also, but like Bigfoot Collectors Club, like, and also we've switched to YouTube. We're just getting it kicked off. Like, please go follow the Bigfoot Collectors Club YouTube channel. I also have a YouTube channel that has some like ambient music and
hell yeah,
stuff.
I didn't know that.
It's also Peace Drone, but there's someone else called Peace Drone that flies a drone. Follow us both, I guess, if you can find it. But I mean, I am on Instagram, sort of pretty okay at it. So you can say hi to me there and give me a follow or whatever.
Yep, and you will find all those links in the show notes, my friends. Rileybray, I hope you have a fantastic day. Keep on doing what you're doing. We need more people out there like you. Musician wizards.
Well, thank you, Steve. I'd say the same to you, truly. Like, thank you for what you do. Thank you for having me, and just like keep doing it. You're shining light in the world, man.
Oh, brother, thank you so much. Right back at you, folks. This has been another episode of Hi, Strangers. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy your dinners tonight. Peace.